Welcome to episode 2 of season 3 of the Between the Cracks podcast. Join Scooter as he chats with Dan Kern from Virginia Housing about their mission and the current real estate market in Virginia. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Between the Cracks podcast. I'm Madden.
And I'm Matt.
And today we are talking with the fabulous Dan Kern from Virginia Housing. He is an old friend of our colleague Janice's, and he was so nice to come on and speak with us a little bit about lending.
And he worked for Janice?
Janice hired him.
Okay, there you go.
Janice hired him. Janice is really good at hiring people.
It must have been a good hire. He's still there.
Yeah, he's still there. I believe he manages people now. He's very successful. And he gave some good insights into like first-time home buying and some of the programs that Virginia Housing works with, and just really important stuff that I think everyone's going to find very helpful.
All right. Well, let's see what Dan has to say.
Perfect.
All right. Well, today we got Dan Kern from Virginia Housing and Development Corporation, commonly called VHDA.
Formerly called VHDA.
Oh, what do you call it now?
Well, Virginia Housing is technically the name we're going by. We're still legally Virginia Housing Development Authority, but
Deport's got you as Virginia Housing Development Authority.
yes.
Okay, that's cool. We're going to try to learn a little bit about you before we ask you the tough questions.
All right.
And most people, I'm assuming when you were growing up, your burning desire was not to work for Virginia Housing, unless you were real strange. So what's what led you to this path?
Oh, gosh. So, I actually grew up about 5 miles from where we are right now. My parents still live in the annex portion of Richmond behind Stony Point Shopping Center. So
Cool.
This was my stomping grounds over here. After graduating from William & Mary, 1992, not a whole lot of jobs for graduates at that time. And my father had been in commercial mortgage lending for years. So I moved up to D.C. A bunch of my fraternity brothers lived up there and ended up getting into the mortgage business on the residential side. Right. And that was 1993. And, I blinked, and 31 years later, still in housing. But, I was a loan officer for many years prior to coming to Virginia Housing, and really just, I loved working with first-time home buyers when I was a loan officer, and then, just chance, luck. Linda Wine, who used to work for Virginia Housing, was in my office one day. I mentioned some new positions coming open, and, I applied for the position that I currently have right now, which is business development and training manager, and I blinked and it's been 8 years. So it's been a good ride.
Really?
Seen a lot of stuff
Well,
in 31
you said
years.
31 years you've been in the mortgage business. That's strange because that's how long we've been in business here. It's 31 years this past February, I guess. I understand that at Virginia Housing, I'm going to have a hard time not calling it VHDA. You had a very interesting role. I mean, Janice told me about it. She said that they went through a lot of screening to get you at this position, but you were the gingerbread man.
I was the gingerbread man recently. Yeah. So Virginia Housing, we had our first parade or float in the Christmas parade that goes on Broad Street. And it was determined that our theme was going to be the gingerbread house. So we had a gingerbread house on the trailer, and then we had 6 people dressed up in gingerbread costumes.
Oh, so you weren't the only one.
I wasn't the only one.
Okay.
There were 4 or 5 other people, and it was a lot of fun, but it was kind of a swarmy day in December. It was rainy, it was humid, and when you're wearing one of these suits walking 2 miles, there's a lot of sweat going on.
I can imagine.
So it was an interesting day, but a lot of fun. Kids had a great time, waving, shaking the gingerbread man, hugging the gingerbread man. So
I told Janice I would like to get you in here to do it, in costume. She said,
for the right price, anything's negotiable, sir.
Oh, to get you on the internet. Wouldn't that be price enough?
Hey,
Put you out there?
Holidays are coming around in 7-8 months.
Really, exactly. And so I understand that a couple things that you're into personally. You like heavy metal.
I do love heavy metal. I was just listening to some on the way over here. Actually.
Really?
Getting into it.
I wish we would have had it playing in your intro or whatever. What bands do you like?
I'm sure Matt can work something in there. Yeah.
Or you want to add something in there? Okay.
I mean, the 70s and 80s, just absolute classic period.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, you name it. I mean, I was into just about everything. And thank God for Sirius XM because I get to relive those glory days every day that I want to.
I've never had Sirius, but one time it came with one of the trucks I bought. I keep saying I'm going to get a subscription to it because it is a pretty cool thing to have.
People do, they either do Sirius XM or Spotify or other platforms. Just like you, I got Sirius XM when I bought the car I'm driving right now, and it was like, oh, hooked.
Yeah, exactly.
Haven't dropped the subscription since.
Yeah. And I see you play racquetball. You still play?
I do play. Yeah, actually, got a match tonight.
Do you? I used to love to play. Did you ever play handball?
I never played handball.
That was hard.
I can't imagine. It seems strange to not have
a paddle.
An extension coming from your hand to hit the ball. But
I know a lot of people that played handball, and I've tried it, but it just didn't work for me, especially having played racquetball.
Yeah, racquetball is a dying sport. As you know, pickleball is it's the new darling. Pretty amazing.
I don't know if I'm going to play a sport called pickleball or not. Just sounds funny.
It's fun. You got to pick that.
Have you ever tried pickleball?
I have tried it. It's fun. Yeah.
Is it?
I used to play a lot of tennis in high school, so it's very much like tennis with a wiffle ball,
right?
Basically.
That's wild. Oh, are you still brewing beer?
I am brewing beer. I've got a couple of kits at home that are screaming at me to get back into them. An IPA, brown ale. So,
right. Is that what you like, the IPAs?
I do love IPAs.
Stouts or the brown ales?
Mostly lagers, brown ales, IPAs.
Yeah.
But, if you put something with alcohol in front of me, I'm more than likely going to imbibe it.
I understand.
Yes,
that's because you worked at VHDA for so long, you need it.
Well, it's this industry. Yeah,
exactly.
Keeps you from going insane.
Yeah. Other than William and Mary, you can't use them. What's your favorite sports team?
Oh, gosh. Favorite sports team? I don't know if I honestly have one. So my oldest daughter just graduated from JMU, go Duke, so huge JMU fan. My youngest daughter's at Virginia Tech, go Hokies, got a equal representation there. But yeah, that's like to follow the college sports there, but keeping it in the Commonwealth. So
right,
we'll say that.
There's a lot of good sports going on here.
A lot of great sports.
There's a lot more going on here than say a state, say like Ohio.
My wife's from Cleveland. I can't comment on that.
Oh, really? Can't tell he's from Ohio, can you? But anyway, and also Janice says that you're quite the Mr. Fix-It. You're doing the grout on your back splash.
I do. I do like the DIY projects. Up until 2 years ago, I had 6 rental properties, so I kind of had to learn how to do a lot of stuff just to fix it on the spot. Didn't want to wait for the contractor, or when I got the quote from the contractor, I was like, wow, I could probably do it for about a third of that price.
Right.
So thank God to Professor YouTube, taught myself how to do a lot of stuff.
And
just
you don't have to get a
videos
loan
from pros.
You don't have to get a loan for that degree.
Absolutely, it's free.
Well, back to what you really do, your real job with Virginia Housing. They do a lot, or you guys do a lot for affordable housing for people, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain some of that? I know that's a pretty big subject.
It's a huge subject.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't even know this until I started working at Virginia Housing, but we have really 3 different divisions. We have homeownership. That's the division that I work in. We have a multifamily or rental, and then we have a community outreach division. So, let's just talk multifamily or rental for a moment. They have been extremely busy because, as you guys drive anywhere around town, just an explosion of apartment complexes going up. And not that we're involved in all of those, but if those particular complexes have a specific number of units that are reserved for people generally making 80% or less of the area median income.
Right.
They may qualify for special financing for us. So, we've done a fair amount in like Manchester. We do a ton in Northern Virginia and different parts around the state. So it is interesting to see the multifamily aspect that we're involved in. And then on the home ownership side, we've got programs that have primarily been for first-time home buyers. And wow, just with the explosion of people buying homes over the last couple of years, we've been extremely busy with that. So, you've got that side, and then community outreach offers a lot of grants to different entities around the state, whether it's city, county governments, nonprofit housing partners. So we've got our hands in a lot of different pies, but basically the overarching theme is trying to advance affordable housing around the Commonwealth.
Right. Well, I tell you, I'm not saying this just because Janice used to work, my wife used to work there because she's severed.
My former boss.
That's why he had to come in here today. Because she sort of not severed ties with, we have nothing going on with that. But I've just always been amazed at how much VHDA did, for people, trying to get them homes. And I found out also that I did not know this. I probably like at least 50% of the population, I thought it was a state-run or state-supported
correct
or entity. But it's not. You guys, I forgot how I used to say it.
Quasi-governmental.
Right, but you take no money, right?
Yeah, so we are totally self-supporting. We get no funds from the state of Virginia. We get no funds from the federal government. So that's probably the biggest misnomer. I mean, whenever we do trainings, that's like one of the very first slides that we bring up is the fact that we are not part of state government,
right? Which
is pretty unique because every state's got a housing finance agency. We're obviously Virginia's housing finance agency. I would say probably 95% of them are a part of the state government where they're located. So we're very unique in that aspect. So people often ask, well, if you're not supported by state or federal dollars, how do you exist? How do you run? I mean, basically we run through packaging, loans, selling those on the secondary market. We'll talk a little bit about those in a minute, but we take those revenues and that's how we fund our operations. So it's pretty neat. We do have the only, I guess, governmental piece that we're involved with is the governor of Virginia appoints our board of commissioners. Right. And then if we want to piggyback on a state contract, we can do that. But that's really about the extent of our involvement with the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool that y'all do cool. That. You make the money that runs the company.
Absolutely.
All that. What kind of challenges do you see facing home buyers today?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is just the lack of supply. So, the spotlight really shone brightly on that during the pandemic because, March of 2020 hits, everybody gets ordered to go home, work from home, and then all of a sudden realizes, wow, we might be here for a while and I need a bigger house to be able to work from home. So all of a sudden, everybody thinks, hey, let's get a bigger house. And, kind of backing up a little bit, in 2008, we had 4.5 million units of housing for sale, whether it was new construction or existing homes. Today, we have 1.5 million. So, we've lost 65% of the housing inventory. And a lot of that was when the Great Recession hit in 2008, we lost a ton of the small to medium-sized builders that just never came back. So, at that time, building a lot of spec housing, that pretty much went away. And we've just never really caught up with that. So, come forward to 2020, we've got a ton of demand. We have low interest rates, and all that is fueling the demand for housing. So you've got a lot of people wanting to buy a few number of homes that are actually on the market, and haven't recovered from that yet. So that's the biggest issue, especially if you're a first-time buyer. You're going out, you're competing against people that are putting 20, 30, 40% down, people paying cash. You're competing against, real estate investment trusts that are, their new investment strategy is let's buy residential housing and rent it out, and as prices increase, so does the value of our portfolio. So, if you're a first-time home buyer, you're competing against Wall Street firms that are coming in and paying cash, closing in a week. That's been extremely challenging. So, I know a lot of people are kind of burned out right now. They've written 10, 20, 30 contracts on homes, and none of them have been accepted. So supply really leads us to that point where we are right now. It's just need more housing, need a lot more housing.
I'm glad we're not buying. I mean, you're in a sweet spot if you're selling a house and for whatever reason it might be, not have to go somewhere else. Which
really is folks that are going to retirement communities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly that demographic right there, because pretty much everybody else, unless you are liquidating, a rental property portfolio.
Buying an RV and taking off.
Exactly. You've got somewhere else that you've got to go. So that's the other piece is everybody that's sitting in a home right now with a 3% interest rate. Yeah, maybe they'd like to move up, but okay, number one, you're going to have to bid with a bunch of other people for the next house. Number two, your rate's going from 3% to maybe 7%. So a lot of people are just kind of stuck where they are for those very reasons right there.
The thing about it, the interest rates today were 6.
Yeah, between 6 and 7%.
They're pretty good interest
Still
rates.
historically great.
Yeah.
Still historically fantastic.
Yeah, but after 2 and 3, the mindset.
We got spoiled. So 2000, the year 2000, we started off the millennium right about 7%, and then, kind of trickled all the way down to upper 2s, low 3s during the pandemic. So for a long time, we just got spoiled with ridiculously low rates and thought that was the norm, and it's really not. So where we are right now is historically still great, but you've got so many people that,
used to it.
Well, they bought maybe the bigger house and got used to that payment at 3%, and then to maybe try to find something larger, house prices have gone up dramatically, interest rates have gone up, so it's kind of the double whammy.
Well, now sort of today, the white elephant in the room. How do you think that all this talk and all these lawsuits about realtor commissions, how is that affecting buyers?
I listened to a fantastic podcast yesterday. I believe the gentleman's name is
Between the Cracks?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But this was the second great podcast that I happened to listen to. I believe the gentleman's name is James Dwiggins. He's the CEO of Next Home. It's a real estate brokerage firm. Had some great points. Basically, I think a lot of people are freaking out. But the reality is, there's not a whole lot that's honestly going to change. So, let's just talk about that briefly. So, basically the core of the lawsuit is kind of the decoupling of the seller having to pay both their agent as well as the buyer's agent when they put their home in the MLS system. So basically the way it's going to roll, probably effective in July, is if you're a seller, you're negotiating with your agent for what you're going to pay them. And then it's really up to you whether you're going to make an offer to a buyer's agent to pay them or there's going to be no offer whatsoever.
Right.
There have been discount brokerages around for years that offer reduced,
2%
commissions.
and stuff like this.
Reduced commissions for sellers to put their properties on the market. So that's really no different. They'll continue to be those. On the buyer side, basically, this is another point that Mr. Dwiggins brought up is, if you're a buyer, especially when you're looking at first-time home buyer properties, that seller is going to have to be educated to the point that, okay, if I'm a seller and my property is primarily a first-time home buyer, neighborhood, the reality of a buyer coming in and being able to cover their down payment, their closing cost, and their agent's commission is just not realistic.
Right.
So sellers really need to take that into consideration and just kind of work backwards and say, okay, here's what I want to clear from the transaction. So here's what I know I'm paying my agent. Here's what I'm probably going to end up paying a buyer's agent, and just build that into the price.
Right.
Really no different than what everyone's been doing for years.
Now, right.
So, I think the piece that has scared real estate agents is just the fact that it's a change. It's something different than what they've been doing for decades. And, being in the lending industry, our industry was kind of shaken to the core in 2008 and 2009 when the Dodd-Frank Act took effect. And, we're all here to tell the story. We all lived through it. Was it painful? Yeah, it was a little bit painful. There was a lot of money that was expended to change systems, but we got through it. There's a ton of smart people in both the lending and real estate side.
Right.
We're going to figure it out. So first thing I would say is everybody take a deep breath. We're going to get through it. We're going to be fine. It's just going to be something different, and change is not always a bad thing. So I'm kind of optimistic about it.
Well, cool. Well, we got one more question unless you guys got a question. Somebody today, young couple getting ready to buy their first home, what would be the first steps that you would suggest they would take?
The first step is really talking to, I would say, a lending professional, or really, we've got online homebuyer education, maybe taking the online homebuyer education piece first, then talking to a lender to figure out, okay, based on your current income, your current debts, here's what you can afford. Those professionals are also going to give you some insight into what's happening in the market right now, what they can expect when they go to make an offer on a property. I think a lot of people who haven't been in the market, or maybe, this is their first home, they might have not much of a clue on what they're really in store for. So kind of getting ready for that process. One of the things that was big for us in 2023 is we came out with some variations to our programs. I mentioned before, our programs have typically been for first-time homebuyers on the homeownership side. In December of last year, we rolled out some changes to our programs where they're offered to repeat buyers. So you don't necessarily have to be a first-time home buyer. And for we call them our non-bond programs, which means they're sold on the secondary market. They're not financed with tax-exempt bonds. So with these non-bond programs, we got rid of the sales price limits that we've had for decades. There's no sales price limit. And the loan limits follow the agency guidelines. So I'm just going to throw out the Richmond region because that's where we are. So if you're in the Richmond region, let's say you are non-first-time home buyer, or maybe you need to buy something that's above our limit, which is $500,000. That's our sales price limit for a first-time home buyer program. You can use a FHA loan in the Richmond region, and you can go up to, I believe it's $647,000.
Really?
Finance 100% of a property. So it's pretty amazing. You could buy a $650,000 home in the Richmond region, finance 100% of that with an FHA loan. So it's pretty amazing. Go up to DC, Northern Virginia area, you can buy a $1.1 million property and finance 100% of that. So
you guys have changed a little bit.
Yeah, we've really, we looked at everything that was happening in the industry and said, okay, how can we help home buyers, whether it's existing or repeat home buyers? So, really relaxing some of our guidelines, did a lot of program work internally, and we're seeing a lot of great response to that because, as we all know in the room here, housing prices have just gone up astronomically over the last 4 years. So we're trying to keep pace with everything that's happening in the industry, and these new programs have really helped a lot of people out.
Well, cool. Well, I tell you, one of the things with this new commission thing, or you revamping, or whatever you want to call it, what I hope doesn't happen, because we see every day, well, not every day, the value of a good real estate agent.
Absolutely.
You get somebody out there and they're watching a show or podcast and say, this is what you do this and this and this. You don't have to worry about anything. I think it's worth the money to have a true professional guide you through the process.
Absolutely. And, I think one thing that's going to happen after July is you're going to have some people that try to go it on their own. Yes. And those deals are probably going to blow up. You've got people that are pretty savvy that might be able to work the transaction without a realtor, but that's a pretty small percentage. Having somebody in your corner that knows the market, knows the players in the market, knows, what's happening as far as the way to posture your offer to get it accepted, you really can't put a price tag on that.
No, I don't think you can.
The things that we're hearing right now are, okay, so let's say you're going into a transaction and the seller saying, hey, I'm not paying the buyer's agent fee. Well, you can obviously bake it into the offer that you're going to make to that seller. But the other thing that I believe we're starting to hear, National Association of Realtors is reaching out to all of the agencies, whether it's FHA, VA, USDA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, to say, hey, could these fees be financed into the loan amount? So we'll see what happens with that. We don't really have any say in what happens, in Washington or from a policy standpoint. But that's another conversation that's being had is, could those possibly be rolled in?
And most of the time, that's not going to make it so upside down to start off with, is it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with FHA loans, a lot of people are financing 100 or 101% of the sales price anyway.
Right.
This may bump it up a couple percentage points, but, as long as we don't have a decline in housing prices like we did after the Great Recession, even a modest clip of 3-4% appreciation per year, you'd be on the upside of that in a year or two after homeownership. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the agencies and the GSEs, government sponsored enterprises. So,
I mean, stuff is very interesting. And I don't have any more questions. Do you have any parting words of wisdom?
I don't know if it's wisdom, but I would just say, I think as an industry, we all need to advocate for just more housing and not just any housing that the average person
Affordable
can actually, afford. As a home builder, I can't blame them for, building the 500 and 1,000 plus homes because that's the only way they're making money.
Yeah.
There's so much baked into the upfront expenses, whether it's proffers, whether it's the cost of land, engineering studies. I think, I've heard local studies that just to get a shovel in the dirt, it's like $100,000 worth of upfront fees per lot just to get started on construction. So
I hadn't heard that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
So, governments need to work on eliminating or drastically reducing the cost to build new construction. Right. There needs to be incentives for home builders to build those entry-level homes. We are seeing some pretty cool things from a technology standpoint, starting to see a lot more modular housing coming out. We're seeing what they call next generation manufactured housing. Right. I don't know if you guys have heard much about Community Land Trust, but Maggie Walker is the Community Land Trust here in Richmond. So a lot of different structures. I mean, you guys probably do inspections on homes that have accessory dwelling units on the back. We're going to see a lot more of those being constructed.
We got one of those being built right close to where we're at.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's where it is.
So especially, people have aging parents going into retirement facilities. I mean, those are $100,000 a year expenses. So if you can put mom and dad in a nice accessory dwelling unit in the back of your property, that's the way to go.
Tell them don't give them a key. All right. Well, Dan, that's been very informative. I really appreciate you coming in here. I think it's been one of the. No, I'm not going to say that. You cut that out, can't you, man? Nope. But I mean, I think there's a lot of good information in there. And the question I got for you: do you have a favorite charity?
I do. So I'm a big dog lover. So Richmond Animal Care and Control, known as RAC. That's the city's shelter, doing some great work. I contribute to them through the Virginia Commonwealth campaign. So they do great work. I mean, Richmond SPCA does great work. So anything involving dogs locally.
Well, we'll do that.
Thank you. We appreciate
we got a gift for you. A cake pop.
Oh, nice.
Locally made.
I've had these before. Who makes these again?
Who makes them?
These are made by Cakes by Kristen.
Okay.
His daughter makes them.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
They're all good. They're really good. But anyway,
Looking
well, thank you
forward to
very
it.
much,
Thank you.
Dan.
Appreciate it.
And even though you William Murray guy, we'll hold that.
I know. See, I can't really root for them in sports because they don't generally make the big time playoffs. But got some good teams there. Got some good teams. Yeah. So. Richmond's done well. That's good.
Depends on your definition of well.
We want to thank Dan for coming and speaking with us today. I know he was kind of pressured into it by Janice, but it was very helpful for me to listen to everything he had to say as someone who's going to buy a home as a first-time home buyer in a few years.
Yeah, he did. He gave some really good information. I know a few years back, I bought my first house. Actually, several years back, I bought my first house. Yeah,
you look so young.
It was a little while ago, but as much as the agent play a role in helping us and especially getting us through those stressful situations. Our mortgage lender did a lot of that too. Really helped out, kept us informed, let us know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, what to expect, what to plan for, and those sorts of things. So these guys do a great, tremendous job helping people out. So I really appreciated it. And it's something that here at Burgess Inspections that we always want to try and improve and offer better services, that sort of thing, especially for the first-time home buyer. If anyone out there has any ideas on anything that we could offer or do that could set us apart when it comes to those first-time home buyers, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to be able to implement some things to really take care of these people that are getting into the homes for the first time.
I'm hoping we figure out something before I buy my first home, Matt. So we have a deadline.
What's the deadline?
I don't know, a year or two.
That's a great deadline right there. A year or two, maybe 10. You never know.
Well,
You never know.
hopefully I can afford it before 10 years. Anyways, we appreciate you guys tuning in today and listening to everything that Dan had to say. We do really appreciate him lending some time from his busy schedule to come and sit down and talk with us.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Have a great day, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Between the Cracks podcast.